What is going on, everybody? We are back with another episode of Coordinated Chaos. On this week's episode, we'll be recapping what happened in Week 1 of the 2024-2025 NFL football season. I am also very excited to introduce my new co-host for this season, and that is Hodge Burkhart. He is an Elon student. He also works at the country club that we are a part of, a member of, and he's just a good dude, knows how to talk, knows sports. And he has very good banter, so I'm excited to get his view on some things in the NFL, as well as just kind of, message board back and forth with him throughout the podcast here. So let's just hop right into this. Essentially, we're going to go with the first game of the season, Thursday night football kickoff, Chiefs versus Ravens. Do you have any initial thoughts? I have a ton of them, obviously, for this one. Right to you.
I mean, that game was a movie. That was awesome. It came down to, half an inch of a toe. Guys should have been wearing white cleats. I mean, that was a great opening day of football.
That's right. Patrick Mahomes was the first person that essentially said, if I had any advice for Isaiah Likely, it was to change his cleat colors to white, just so you can't really tell that toe did go out. But that was just kind of like one of those weird little arrogant things you say after you win a football game, especially when you squeak one out. But yeah, just right off the bat, the Chiefs, for me, for my money, they are the favorite to go ahead and three-peat right now. There's not an other team in football this weekend looked any better than them straight off the bat. And so, unfortunately, as an Eagles fan, which I'm wearing a Colts jersey, don't think too much into that right now. I just really like Anthony Richardson. I'm just going to give him a little bit of an ode. But at the fact that I'm an Eagles fan and I have to sit here and really admit that the Chiefs are just the team to beat right now once again after they beat us in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, it pains me to say, but it is what it is. Patrick Mahomes is just unbelievable, and he gets it done at every turn.
Yeah, Mahomes is fantastic. There's not a quarterback like him. Kelsey, when it matters, always gets the job done. Pacheco is also really, really good. And their defense doesn't get much credit. And Chris Jones, McDuffie, those guys are pretty good.
Yeah, they got some absolute ballers. Steve Spagnuolo, who knows how to put his players in position to win on defense, even if they're down a few players like what's homeboy's name that went to the Titans?
Yeah. The other Pro Bowl corner.
L'Jarius Sneed. There you go. I couldn't think of it. But yeah, he's a stud. Went to the Titans in the offseason. They just couldn't pay him considering what they already have on the books with Chris Jones, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, all those guys. So, but he still makes things happen. Obviously, Andy Reid on the offensive side of the ball just knows what he's doing. But in this game, really just came down to the fact that the Ravens couldn't really get into a rhythm in the passing game. They don't really have the weapons that they really should have. I don't know why they didn't address more of the weapon situation in the offseason. Zay Flowers is a good player, obviously. They have Mark Andrews, who didn't get a lot of run in this game, which a lot of fantasy managers are a little upset about. But Isaiah Likely came through. That's going to be a huge waiver wire ad for a lot of people in fantasy this weekend, or this upcoming week. I just don't think they have the weapons to really compete with the Chiefs right now, and it's just the O-line as well is just kind of a ragtag group right now. They're trying to figure out some things. They had a right guard move to right tackle. A lot of things just they need to figure out going throughout the season. I feel like they'll get better as the season goes on, but just I don't know if at the end of the day they're as good as the Chiefs.
Yeah, I don't think they are. Two, I never fully understood the addition of Derrick Henry. I love Derrick Henry, but they did not need just a huge running back. If they could have exchanged him and gotten a Brandon Ayuk, I think that would have been so much more valuable.
That's actually a really good point. I agree with that. I feel like that's probably where they should have went, was just pass weapons in general. Obviously, Derrick Henry brings an element that they haven't had in the past, but At the same time, Lamar Jackson's so good that he already warrants so much attention by the defense up front from the front seven on opposing defenses that do you really need another guy that's that powerful up front? I don't know. It could still work out for them, but he just didn't get a whole lot of utilization in the first game because of the game script, and they were down early in that game. It was just, I don't know if they need a little bit more time to kind of figure out how they want to utilize Derrick Henry, but in the first game, it just didn't really work out for them.
Yeah, they need to figure out how to use him, but also the Ravens will be fine. They went into Arrowhead and lost by 7 on a game that should have gone into overtime. Every other team most likely would have gotten smoked. And they held their own, and they lost. But if you're going to lose to a team, might as well lose to the Jams.
I mean, honestly, I agree with that. Let's just go ahead and move on to the Friday Night Lights first Friday night game of the season, which I don't know if there's going to be another one. They might have another Black Friday at the end of the season when it's like in December or whatever. November, I think, is when they do that. Eagles versus Packers, first game in South America ever done. In a soccer stadium there in Sao Paulo, Brazil.
That's awesome.
The problem with it being a soccer stadium,
wacky turf,
yes, was the terrible turf, which just gave me PTSD from the Super Bowl a couple years ago, where essentially in Arizona, I was there live. I did not like what I was having to watch there. It essentially neutralized the Eagles' pass rush in that Super Bowl a couple years ago, and then having to watch that in the opening game of this season, it was just like I was just getting flashbacks. That meme of the little dog with like the like shooting in the background. That's like what my brain was doing at the time. But it kind of sucked because like the game was entertaining, but it could have been much more entertaining if the field wasn't so sloppy. The NFL's got to be a little bit better about figuring things like that out in the big time games when everybody's got their eyes on it. But going towards the game, the Eagles eked it out, had a very slow start, very sloppy at the beginning there. Jalen Hurts throws a very bad interception early on in the game in his territory. Luckily, the Eagles defense was able to stop them and just kind of, just hold them for 3 points, which is the best thing they could have done there. And I wasn't very confident in the fact that they were able to do that considering what happened at the end of last year. I just have no confidence in what they were doing last year at all. And so just to see some competency in general in the defensive side of the ball and the offensive side of the ball eventually, I was very encouraged by that. But Jalen Hurts, obviously, pick, not acceptable, not a good throw, not a good decision by him. And then the next possession also, they have a little bit of miscommunication between the new center, Cam Jurgens, and him. Snap hits him in the shoulder, falls, fumble. The Packers jump on it, and then the defense once again was able to hold for a field goal, which was very nice of them to do to bail out Jalen Hurts in the offense. And then really things just kind of started to turn around for the Eagles. They were able to kind of get into a little bit more of a rhythm and actually get Jalen Hurts some easy completions and then get him in the game once again, because I feel like at the beginning they were a little bit frazzled with the miscommunication and stuff like that. But yeah, they were able to get some stuff done, and Jordan Love was kind of carving up the Eagles defense, but at the end of the day, he didn't have that great of a game at the end. In the second half, he was missing some throws that we saw him make at the end of last season. So he didn't really bring over all of that momentum from last season into this first game. But then obviously we also have the injury at the end that kind of was unfortunate, 5 seconds left. MCL sprain. Luckily, it's just that rather than when we saw the close-up, it looked like a full-blown tear of some sort because there was a pop in his knee. Do you have any other thoughts on what kind of happened in that game?
I mean, I just think week one, especially when your team's the team that has to travel like across the country, your job is to just win in any way possible. Like you're tired, you have no idea where you are, you're not even in your own country. You're playing a Packers team that made it to the divisional. It was by no means a cupcake, but they also, if anyone came to play, it was Saquon Barkley. The Eagles showed what the Giants had and really were not able to utilize with a pretty good offensive line. But I also think the Eagles defense, while is very good, you do not want to put your defense in a position when you end up playing a team like the Ravens or the Chiefs or the Bills where they're going to make you pay. Like, you're not going to be able to stop them for 3 on a short field twice. It just won't happen. So it's early to get those mishaps out now and get crisper over the season.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. That's, like you said, as the season goes on, you're not going to get your defense to get 2 back-to-back, field goal attempts rather than, touchdowns there, because it's just you're turning the ball over in the red zone or in their red zone specifically, and it's not going to be easy to do that throughout the season. So you got to clean up the mistakes, obviously. But like you said, Saquon had an incredible game, 3 touchdowns, caught 1, ran 2 in. You just saw what he was able to do with a competent O-line, and it was just really impressive what he was able to accomplish in that first game with, a little bit of a new look Eagles offensive line. Obviously, Jason Kelsey retired, so that's a huge loss for us in leadership and obviously play. He's one of the best centers to ever play the game, if not the best. That's arguable. I'm biased. I'll say it. But Cam Jurgens came in, played a pretty good game. Mekhi Becton's a new right guard for the Eagles, and he's just a mammoth of a man, was moving people in the run game. So if they can stay healthy, I like our chances to run the ball well this year, which in turn should help Jalen Hurts be able to throw the ball in the passing game because it's going to open some things up for him. And then at the end of the day, once again, he threw another interception later in the game as well, and it was just another bad decision, throwing across his body as he was running out towards the sideline and trying to get it to A.J. Brown. And it's just, there's only a few quarterbacks in the league that have the arm to get that specific throw down. It's like Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes. It looks like Anthony Richardson can do it. Very few guys can make that throw. He tried it, didn't work. Jair Alexander actually made a great play on it, but just Jalen Hurts needs to learn to essentially just like chill out and just give or take what the defense gives you, because we're so talented on offense that at the end of the day, like, you just got to kind of manage the game. Like, yes, there's going to be some opportunities later in the season where you're gonna have to kind of put the team on your back and do hero mode. But in a game like that, where essentially all you got to do is kind of like leak the clock, just be smart with the football.
In a way, he is kind of a Brock Purdy on a bit of a poorer man's team, because now Saquon, you can compare him to McCaffrey. They're pretty close. But they have the offense, and like the 49ers, they have the defense. So his job is to just not screw up.
Correct.
If you have to punt it. Let your defense go out there, cover full field.
100%.
Fine.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Were there as many illegal formation penalties in that game as there were the Chiefs?
There was, I think, one or two. So not as many with the Chiefs and Ravens game there. That was a wild one. They were obviously setting an example for the rest of the league very early on that if you're not going to put if your tackle's head isn't in line with the belt line of the center, they're going to call it. And so they set that precedent very early on. I think the Eagles, Lane Johnson had one of them, and I think that might have been the only one. I don't think they had two. So Lane Johnson had one, and then very shortly after that, he had a situation where he thought the guy jumped off sides, and he just didn't move. And Rashawn Gary came around the edge and destroyed Jalen Hurts, and he was just like, what in the world was that? So it was a weird game, but the Eagles eked it out. 1-0, like you said, it's a big deal to just be like, it's technically a home game for the Eagles, which is kind of screwed them in the long run, that like they didn't get a game in Philly. But at the end of the day, it's just a 1-0 in Brazil. Weird spot. With it. Starting out 1-0 is a very low key thing in the league. Like, it's a good start no matter what, especially against a good Packers team. That was one that when you look at the schedule, that was like, that's a definite potential loss on the season, and to come out and go ahead and get that under the belt.
Especially with how the Packers ended last year, everyone was like, oh crap, like, these guys can play. Yeah,
absolutely. All right, let's go on to one of the first games of the Sunday slate, 12 o'clock game, or 1 o'clock games, I should say. Vikings versus Giants, man, this one was ugly.
Slugfest.
Oh my God.
Just a slugfest.
Just Daniel Jones, unfortunately, taking all of his unfortunate and bad momentum of the preseason directly into the regular season, throws another pick six and throws 2 interceptions on the day, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think he has like more pick sixes than touchdowns in his last some amount of games.
Yeah.
And I also feel so bad for Malik Neighbors. One, Daniel Jones is trash, but 2, he went from LSU, where he played with Jaden Daniels, who's great, who did not throw the ball ever.
Yeah.
So that man he would get open, he'd never get the ball. And now if he's open, the ball is getting thrown into the ground. It's just unfortunate.
Yeah, no, that's unfortunate, because obviously, I don't know if you saw the Malik Neighbors interview after the fact too. That was not a good look for Daniel Jones. No. Apparently they asked him, like, what do you think he was seeing back there? And he essentially was just like, I don't know what's going on back there. Yeah. And so, like, the more this happens and the more Malik Neighbors is going to have to deal with just bad QB play, that could sour the whole relationship with him and the Giants in the first place. And the optics on that's not good. And obviously, if this just continues, everybody's gone. Daniel Jones is clearly going to be gone after the season. Brian Daboll's probably going to be a guy that falls for it, as well as potentially Joe Shane, the GM, who I'm going to have a little bit of a monologue at the end of this podcast on he's going to be featured in it, but it's not completely about him, but it's kind of about him. So I'll get to that later on. That's a little bit of a tease for the very end of the podcast there. Go a little scorched earth on some people. But yeah, Vikings look pretty good. Once again, that Brian Flores defense, he throws exotic blitzes at everybody every Sunday. He does not care. He has the F it button clicked every single Sunday. And
you let AJ for the Madden.
Basically, yeah, more or less. He's just letting it fly. And I really appreciate his aggressiveness because it works a lot of the time. I mean, sometimes if you have a smart QB, they're going to take advantage of it, and that happens occasionally. But a guy like Daniel Jones, just throw the kitchen sink at him and see what happens. And it turned out great. Sam Darnold looked good in this game. Started out like 12 out of 12. You can't ask anything better out of Sam Darnold in the first game of the season. We'll see if he can continue and maintain that type of level of play. But for now, it looks pretty good. He was getting the ball to his playmakers, and that's all Justin Jefferson wants.
Yeah, it's helpful for a quarterback to have a receiver like Justin Jefferson, where like if need be, he'll either get open or make a play, and that's what not that Daniel Jones is that great, but they don't really have that. Malik Nabers is too young, and it stinks that their relationship isn't great because he's not mature enough to like be able to handle it. He's a rookie and he wants to play well to get paid well. And I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's a situation that could sour very quickly in New York.
Things can go bad really fast.
Yeah, and by midseason, he's probably going to be looking forward to whoever the number 1 overall pick is going to be in the draft because the Giants will be right up there with quite a few teams that we're going to be talking about today. Yeah. Let's move on to the Steelers versus the Falcons. And this one, I was alluding to before the podcast started. I was talking to you about how Kirk Cousins looked from an optics perspective, and it is not good. I don't believe there's been video evidence of him where he's just refusing to put his right foot in the cleat in the ground whenever he's going to go throw a football. They refused to use play action on Sunday because they were afraid of his running ability and how healthy his Achilles is. I just don't think he's comfortable with it. Obviously, they cleared him to play. He's like physically able to do it. They said his Achilles is good, but I just don't think he trusts it yet, which is not going to be good for them going forward. Because if he can't move, he was already a statue quarterback, but if he can't move at all and slide in the pocket, it's going to be a disaster on offense for them.
Yeah, that's never good. And like they're lucky because Bijan Robinson gets them out of a lot of issues. They throw a lot of checkdowns. It was like McCaffrey. They throw a lot of crappy checkdowns, and he makes a guy or two miss and gets a first down that they shouldn't have. But for like the Drake Londons and the Kyle Pitts, those guys, like Pitts scored, but he caught like 2 or 3 passes. Like their offense is not a very well managed machine.
No, and there was miscommunication in that game as well with snaps and things like that in motion because it's a new offense for Kirk Cousins. They got Zach Robinson from the LA Rams to come over to be the offensive coordinator there, as Raheem Morris is the new head coach there in Atlanta. And so they got a lot of kinks to kind of press out right now, and on top of that, if they're having to deal with the fact that Kirk Cousins just doesn't trust his leg or his foot, or his Achilles, I should say, then it's going to be a long season for them, and I feel like there's a chance we can see Michael Penix kind of early on in the season.
Get the run?
I think
if you get the leash.
Well, so here's the thing. This upcoming Monday, I will be in Philadelphia going to watch the game. The Falcons are coming to Philly. Obviously, ruckus environment. They're not going to be able to communicate like they couldn't even communicate this past week. They were at home. There was too many Steelers fans in the building in Atlanta, and so they had to do like a silent count in their own building. There, you're not going to be able to communicate up there in Philly. We're going to be loud. It's going to be obnoxious. And then the third week of the season, guess who they have? Chiefs.
Yeah,
that's going to be a disaster. So if they start out 0-3 and Kirk Cousins still hasn't moved in the pocket, I think we see Michael Penix earlier than people potentially think.
Yeah, because of their first 3, this one would have been a great one to just steal. Because then even if you go 1-2, it's like, well, we played the Eagles and the Chiefs.
Yeah, it's the schedule is pretty hard, but we beat the Steelers. Yeah. But no, TJ Watt had other ideas. Yeah, he was unbelievable. He was hounding Kirk Cousins in the pocket there.
Especially since Kirk can't move. Like,
he's just back there.
He's so fast.
Yeah, he just gets off. I mean, he he was literally jumping the count.
Did you see him get called for the flag where he perfectly jumped the count?
100%.
He was so mad.
Which is funny because I heard a story where apparently, and I think one of the sideline reporters like said something about this. He apparently at halftime, like pretty much, that was very close to after it happened was halftime, and essentially the ref came to him and was like, "Hey man, to be honest with you, we made a mistake. You were not offsides. You just got the snap count that well." And so like, he essentially admitted fault on that, and that would have been a strip sack fumble.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, like, he gets paid for getting sacks and stuff like that. So like, that kind of sucks that it doesn't go onto his stat sheet at the end of the day. But they had a great game. Justin Fields did just enough to win the football game.
Managed it.
Russell Wilson on the sidelines with his pads on, which seemed weird at the time considering he was inactive. But apparently he was the emergency quarterback, so I guess it was okay for him to have his pads on. But he's just a weird dude who it looks like he would be a guy that would just throw the pads on because he's just so weird.
Yeah.
Even if he was even if he was inactive. But yeah, he was apparently the emergency third QB, so there was an actual reason why he had his pads on. But yeah, like I said, Justin Fields did just enough. He is at the very least a quarterback that's going to give you everything he has. He's going to put it all out there on the field. I personally am not a huge Justin Fields fan. I don't think he's a great thrower of the football, and I think it's been proven over time that he's just not that great at it. But he is an incredible athlete, and he can get you out of bad situations.
Yeah, he's an athlete. He'll try really hard, but he got kind of lucky with his situation at Ohio State because his receiving core was unbelievable. He was like Olave, Harrison, and Jigba. Like, you know, you could throw me back there.
Yeah, Jameson Williams for like a year there, and then he went to Alabama. Yeah, he had an absolute stud. Just
those guys make plays where you're like, nice
just throw it down there. Somebody will go get it.
Yeah, throw it up and let someone go get it.
Yeah, and then obviously his running ability is just like the thing that puts his game just like where it's like average to above average because he runs like a 4.4.
Yeah,
and it's like
he's fast.
and he's thick and he's strong,
he knows
so he can run through contact.
Too.
Yeah,
he's not like a Lamar where occasionally he'll take off too soon. Like he knows when to sit in the pocket and when to just go.
Yeah. So let's go on that game. I mean, obviously Steelers destroy the Falcons. There's nothing really much to say about that. Bears versus Titans. We obviously have the debut of Caleb Williams. Did not go that well for him. Threw for less than 100 yards on the day.
He won.
But he did win, which is the first time apparently that a rookie QB has won since 2002, which was David Carr, Derek's brother.
Someone tied. I forget who tied.
I don't remember who that was, but that was a few years ago.
It was like 10-1.
Yeah, that's crazy. But yeah, Caleb Williams didn't look great. Offense didn't look great. I'm a little concerned about Shane Waldron, the offensive coordinator for the Bears. He came over from Seattle.
Yeah.
And Seattle didn't look good on offense last year at all. They were putting their wide receivers in really weird positions. Like Jackson Smith and Jigba for like the first half of the season, like wasn't running real routes. He was just running like bubble screens. And like, yes, in theory he can do that, but he's more of like a crossers, like catch the ball, yak. Yeah, that's just not his full game. So I'm not sure if Shane Waldron really knows how to put all of his players in the perfect position to win. So I'm a little concerned there. Obviously, the Bears defense stepped up, and the Bears special teams stepped up, had 2 touchdowns there, which essentially won them the game because they did not score an offensive touchdown. They kicked some field goals, obviously had those turnovers and turned into scores.
We got the meme of Will Levis with his knee on his knees.
The surrender cobra.
That was awesome.
Dude, incredible imagery there. Just like,
meme.
I mean, just full-blown Carson Wentz, trying to make a play where he should have just like trying to throw the ball out of bounds. Throws it right to a guy and just get taken out for a score.
I need him to improve because I drafted Calvin Ridley and he did not.
We're going to have to monitor that situation going forward in fantasy, like whether you can really trust Will Levis because Calvin Ridley, he looked good in the preseason and I think he's still a good player. They just got to give him the ball. But Will Levis has got to make better decisions in general. But yeah, Bears get the win. Nothing much more to say there. It was kind of a struggle bus for both teams.
Not pretty.
Yeah, not pretty at all. Not a good game for like red zone. You turn it over there and there's just turnovers happening. It was kind of weird. Next game, Bills versus Cardinals. This was a shocking one. It started out where the Cardinals came out hot. They were up, I think, 17-3 at one point. And I was like, man, I was high on Kyler and that offense coming into the offseason. but they did end up getting pretty conservative after they got that lead, and that was a little bit concerning for their offense. Did not utilize Marvin Harrison Jr. pretty much at all. He had one catch for 4 yards. There was that freeze frame that everybody was talking about where Marvin Harrison at the end of the game where there was a chance to win the game. He was wide open.
Yeah.
But I did see a breakdown from Dan Orlovsky where it showed where, like, he really didn't have a chance to throw that ball to him.
No,
he was pushed off of his spot, and then he couldn't reset fast enough. And, like, obviously he has a good arm, but he doesn't have the arm of, like, an Anthony Richardson where he can slip and throw it 65 yards through the air. So, this is going to be the game script, I feel like, a lot for the Cardinals this season where their offense is good enough to compete. Their defense is not good. They're going to get destroyed up and down the field on defense. They just don't have the Jimmies and Joes, even if they do have the X's and O's with Jonathan Gannon, former defensive coordinator for the Eagles, which I kind of malign considering what he did in the Super Bowl. That's another that's a discussion for another day. But either way, the Bills obviously come back in miraculous fashion because Josh Allen is going to have to, once again this season, drag the Bills offense kicking and screaming to W's because they just don't really have the guys there either. They have a ragtag group, which
Dawson Knox.
Dawson Knox. You got, Dalton Kincaid, Khalil Shakir. You got MVS there randomly. A lot of people probably don't even realize he's there. Curtis Samuel, when he gets healthy, he'll be in the lineup, but he has like a turf toe thing right now. So they just have like a group, which they all have their like little roles that they have. I just don't know how sustainable it's going to be where Josh Allen essentially feels like he has to do everything.
While Diggs was not a great teammate, Diggs could make
He was the number one. Yeah. He was the guy. He was the security blanket on third down. And now I feel like Josh Allen's going to have to feel like he has to do everything. And he was running in this game all over the place, which he's incredible at. He's very good at it. But then you have him, trying to jump over a guy, which he did, and land in the end zone, hurts his own hand doing it, and it's like, how sustainable is that at the end of the day? And like, if he does that if he stays healthy for 17 weeks and does that, he will be the MVP. If they end up winning the AFC East or stay in contention of it, he will be in the running for MVP because he's just dragging them to it.
Absolutely. He is their offense. With the Bills, they've been in a tough spot for a few years because they've always been so close.
Yeah.
And they can't be.
They just run into the buzzsaw that is Patrick Mahomes every year in the playoffs.
And they still get close and they can't win.
Correct, yeah. And unfortunately this year, I think the Bills, last year,
the step down.
Yeah, the Bills defense just last year was not that great, and I think it's probably even a little bit worse this year, which is another thing that's working.
Is worse.
Yeah, and then the offensive weapons specifically are just much worse. James Cook is a good player. I like him as a weapon. But it's just, once again, it's going to be the Josh Allen show, and it's like, can he do this for 17 games and stay healthy and get through a season?
Yeah, because his issue is, like, against a team like the Cardinals, he can do it.
Yeah.
But when you run into, like, a Ravens or even a Bengals, a Chiefs, like, someone you're like,
because he's going to have to push the envelope in those games.
Yeah.
More than he did against the Cardinals, and then that's going to potentially result in turnovers and whatnot. Or injury, like you said. All right, let's move on to the next game. We got Patriots versus Bengals. This was the biggest upset of the weekend. Obviously, the Bengals were, I think, 8.5-point favorites. I bet that. Destroyed multiple. No.
Coach's fantasy team.
Just like 8 fantasy points on the day. It's not good. Cooked a lot of my parlays on the weekend. Not a fan of that, obviously. Patriots came out and just looked solid.
Ramondre Stevenson had like 100-something yards and a touchdown.
I think it was like 138 and a tutty.
Good for him.
Yeah, that's a great start for him.
Brissett did his job.
Yeah, which was just don't turn the ball over. Like don't put the ball in harm's way and just like let the run game do its thing. Let the defense play well. The defense is going to be solid pretty much all season long. They don't have a lot of great players there. No. They got a lot of good players.
Yeah,
and collectively, they know what they're doing under that system of Gerard Mayo. He's running more or less the same type of stuff that Bill Belichick's been running for the past 25 years or whatever it is. So they know what they're doing on that side of the ball. As long as the offense can stay competent all season long, they're going to be, at the very least, they're going to be a pain in the rear. They're not going to win a ton of games, I don't believe. But
their team, you have a chance of losing to.
Correct. You can't just they're not like a bye week.
Yeah, you can't brush them off.
No,
They're not
you
the
cannot.
Panthers where
No.
you're like, we'll be fine no matter
Yeah,
what.
correct. Yeah, because they're just too well coached for that to happen.
And their defense is too solid where
Yeah.
if they get Brissett throws a good pass or two, all of a sudden it's 14-3 and you're like, well,
Yeah, you're like, now I got to
Yeah.
come back on this
Yeah.
defense, and it's not
easy.
freaking candy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's the biggest upset. Obviously, Joe Burrow, pretty concerning for me.
Yeah.
I saw a video earlier today where he's on the sideline, kind of like moving his wrist around, and that's the wrist, obviously, that he hurt last season, had it surgically repaired. It was already a weird injury because they were saying that essentially the only people in football that's ever suffered this, it has been linemen and linebackers.
Yeah, that's not good.
And so there's no precedent for a quarterback coming back and being able to throw. I mean, your wrist is obviously a huge part of you throwing the football. So this is just a little weird. He apparently, I don't know if it's still the thing, but at a certain point a couple weeks ago, he was still not able to throw the football 3 days in a row, or at least that was like the physical therapy side of it, where like they're like, do not throw more than 3 days in a row. And I don't know if that's still the case, but if that is, that's
kind
still
of
not
concerning.
good. Very concerning. And then you have Jamar Chase, who's in a contract dispute right now. He's trying to get paid. And so he's kind of like just half-assing it out there right now. And it's just like, I don't know. T. Higgins got a hamstring, and he's not paid either. He's probably gone after this season. There's a lot of turmoil going on there with the Bengals, and I probably should have saw that before going and betting on them in week one with all that turmoil.
Yeah, now that we talk about it, I probably should have started Purdy.
Yeah. Now that, once we, like, in hindsight, once we kind of talk ourselves through it, we're like, why did we make this decision?
This was a bad idea. Nothing in what we just said sounds good about the Bengals.
Yeah, it was a weird game. Obviously, they tried to come back in it, but it was just
16-10.
Yeah, something like that. It's just nobody scored a whole lot. It was just the Bengals couldn't get anything going on offense. The offense was really conservative. There's a lot of short passes. I don't think Burrow threw the ball over 10 yards more than like 3 times in the game. Just a weird game plan. And I know you're down, but you're not down by that many. And they didn't stay balanced throughout the game.
Yeah.
They didn't run the ball as much with Zach Moss and Chase Brown, and Zach Moss kind of showed himself to be the number one in the offense. So that's interesting for fantasy purposes, but it wasn't good enough for them to win the game.
Well, and when the Bengals, 2 years ago when they went to the Super Bowl 3 years ago, their offense was awesome.
Oh, yeah.
They were banging. Higgins, Chase, Mixon, they were just so good.
Yeah.
And now it's all the magic.
They got rid of Mixon. They just didn't want to pay him, which I understand. They traded him for a 7th to the Texans, and then we'll get to that a little bit later. He went crazy.
Yeah, he had.
But yeah, that's literally the next game we're talking about.
Yeah.
So we might as well get into that. Texans versus Colts. Let's go straight into that. Joe Mixon had 159 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah.
Was going crazy in that game. That is the one element of the Texans' offense last year that they just kind of were missing. They had Devin Singletary. He was just okay.
Yeah,
they had Damian Pierce, who he looked good in his rookie season, but then he just kind of faded the last couple of years. So, I mean, Joe Mixon has kind of balanced that offense out a lot.
They used to be, or at least last year, they had to be air raid. They couldn't ground and pound, which is awesome, but then when you have a team that can cover you and you can't run and they don't have to put 8 in the box, it's tough to throw.
Correct. Yeah. I think, and this is the healthiest, obviously, we've seen the Houston Texans offensive line as well.
Yeah.
And so as long as they can stay healthy, which has been a tough thing for them, I feel like the last few years, it's midway through the season that they got both guards are out because of injury, blah, blah, blah. If they can just stay together for an entire season, I don't see a lot of teams beating the Texans this year because they looked very good in week one.
I don't see many teams beating them either. And they also, the X factor that Diggs brings at the goal line of route running when the running does not work is really helpful. Yards wise, he had 30 catches, he had 60, 2 touchdowns.
He's able to manipulate the middle of the field there, and
he can get open so well.
Yeah, he can get open, and it's already the offense is already opened up, considering the fact that you have Nico Collins on the other side and then Tank Dell.
Yeah.
They have that perfect, people love to use that analogy of I want to build a basketball type team with my wide receiver core. You got Nico Collins, who's a power forward, and then Stephon Diggs is a shooting guard, and Tank Dell's a point guard.
Yeah.
They have every little aspect of a perfect wide receiving core, and it showed on Sunday, and they beat the Colts.
Yeah, because I think that's where Diggs last year got frustrated was the Bills didn't have that many other options throwing wise. Like the tight ends were decent, but
Yeah.
you could hone in on Diggs, and now you can't hone in on
100%.
Diggs.
Yeah, Gabe Davis just wasn't that number 2 that he was supposed to kind of grow
He's not a
into.
Tank out.
No, he's not Tank Dell. He's not Nico Collins even close. So, but yeah, let's talk about. I mean, obviously the Texans won the game. C.J. Stroud looked incredible again, just piggybacking off what he did in his rookie
Richardson
season.
looked solid.
But Richardson, man, I'm wearing the Peyton Manning jersey in ode to Anthony Richardson right now because he looked incredible.
That throw was insane.
I mean,
Off
the dude,
his back foot, like 50 yards.
Dude slipped and then threw off his back foot 65.3 yards in the air, perfectly in stride to Alec Pierce, and scored a touchdown, obviously. Only threw the ball, like, I think 19 times or something like that, had like 9 completions. Yeah. But, dude, some of the throws he made in that game were incredible.
His arm talent is, and they have to let him. They just have to let him play.
The
crap 100% is insane.
Yeah, and then I believe like wholeheartedly in everything that Shane Steichen does. He obviously was more or less the mastermind behind Jalen Hurts in that offense in 2022 when the Eagles went to the Super Bowl, and he knows what he's doing with the X's and the O's.
Yeah.
And he, I think, is going to make Anthony Richardson an absolute problem in this league. Between him running the football, I mean, there was a run in this game where he ran for a touchdown where a DB hit him on like 3-yard line, and that guy hit an absolute brick wall, and he just pile drive through him and just got into the end zone. Did not matter. Luckily, I was able to draft him in one of my fantasy leagues, and he went crazy in week 1, and so that was a nice little cherry on top to my weekend.
Yeah, fantasy. It's always nice when you can watch a player you like and they're on your fantasy team.
100%. Yeah, no, I want to invest in some Anthony Richardson memorabilia at some point because I just think he's going to be the truth.
Where did he go to college?
Florida.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's tested me early, huh? All right, let's go on to the next game: Dolphins versus Jags.
Drama.
Yeah, this one was crazy. yeah, let's just go ahead and get into that too. Tyreek Hill going into the game right outside of Hard Rock Stadium,
on the ground,
detained by the police officers, thrown on the ground essentially. Just not good optics for the Miami-Dade police there. You had Calais Campbell and a few other teammates stopping and being like, "Hey guys, like it's Tyreek Hill, like he kind of needs like." Whatever he did, just give him his ticket and go. Like if it's speeding, if it's reckless driving, just let him go on. Like he's trying to get to the game here. And it was just not a great look, but it did not matter because in the game Tyreek Hill went crazy again and scored me 30+ points.
He had an 80-yard touchdown, and when his touchdown celebration, his hands behind the back with Jalen Waddle tightening the hands.
Absolutely incredible.
Now he can play the game.
Yeah, dude, that was the number 1 celebration on the year.
Awesome.
It's going to be the number 1 throughout the entire year. I don't think anybody's ever going to beat it this season. And he put a stamp on
the
situation.
Of just like this happened to me and I'm going to make fun of it just for fun. It's awesome.
Too good. Unfortunately, this game for the Jaguars did not go in their favor. They were up 17-7 with 2:27 left in the third, which is something I wrote down because I thought that was very interesting. That deep in the third quarter, the Jags had the lead and just could not sustain it. Very big play at the end of the game there where it looked like Travis Etienne was going to walk right into the end zone. He was going towards it, and Javon Holland comes up, punches the ball out. It rolls into the end zone. Yeah. Dolphins jump on it, and then the next play was the Tyreek Hill 80-yard touchdown. It completely flipped the whole game on its head.
14-point change.
A 14-point swing is huge in the NFL, and the momentum that shifts there. And shout out to Ray Lewis, Momentum is real. I'll put everything behind that. But the Dolphins come back, and it was an interesting quote that what's his face? What's the head coach, the Dolphins? McDaniel. McDaniel at the end of the game was essentially saying something along the lines of like, last year he doesn't think that his team wins that football game, and so that just gives them more confidence going forward, and like that they can dig through the trash through a lot of a game and still be able to win one at the end. Because I feel like last year, a lot of the game scripts that they won in was they got off to a hot start and just never, they just never let up.
Like
they
just scored 73.
Oh, exactly. So like it was just like if they didn't do that, they didn't win the game. Like if there was ever a struggle period during a game, they just let the other team kind of grab the momentum and run with it. And they never were able to kind of grab it back. In this game, that's exactly what they did there. So that was encouraging from that standpoint. Unfortunately, from my perspective, I don't think the Dolphins are still a playoff team. I see them missing it. and it's only really due to the defense. Yeah. I don't know what it is. I think the Bills and the Jets make it. I might have to change that going forward after what the Jets did on Monday Night Football. We'll get that later. But the Dolphins defense they're missing too many pieces. Christian Wilkins in free agency goes to Las Vegas. Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips both are coming off of very major injuries and their edges, and so they got Chop Robinson they drafted in the first round from Penn State. He is good, but he's young. We'll see how that goes. But they're missing a lot of pieces on the defensive side of the ball. Obviously, they just paid Jalen Ramsey again, which was, I guess, good to lock him up at the very least. But he's getting up there in age as well. Javon Holland's a very good safety. They got rid of Xavier Howard in the offseason. I just don't know if their defense is good enough. Their offense might be better than it was last year, to be completely honest with you, because I think it's just another year in that system. They've gotten more fast players. I mean, like it's crazy. They're using Devon Achane in the passing game almost as like the pseudo third receiver there, which I think is a good idea because they have so many running backs on the roster that I think are good. But unfortunately, going into week 2 now, Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane are both questionable, and the game's on Thursday night, so I don't know how that's going to go.
Yeah, I don't know if either of them are going to play, but the ability to like get a player and fit them into the system, because we didn't even talk about it with the Chiefs, but like in Xavier Worthy, like they figured out how to use him, and obviously Tyreek Hill, you know he's fast, but like I think any team with a Tyreek Hill like has a chance to do a lot, because like the guy punched the ball out, turnover, and then it was an 80-yard touchdown. Like not many receivers can just like it. The picture I saw, it was him, the two guys, and you're like, oh, he'll get tackled, just runs around him.
He just completely ran the angle off because they had the angle on him. No, totally. He's just too fast for it to like work.
They couldn't.
Just a crazy athlete. He's just such a game changer in general, and that's why, like, I know that most people, the consensus is Justin Jefferson's the best wide receiver in all of football. But like, I feel like if you lined up all of the coaches in the NFL and said like what wide receiver scares you the most, they would say Tyreek Hill.
Absolutely.
Just because he can change the game in an instant. Like, you can throw the ball behind the line of scrimmage and change the game. Yeah. You can throw it over their head and still change the game. So he's just so dynamic.
Yeah, the fact that the Chiefs had him is insane. But
it's like a fever dream.
Yeah, like that.
I guess they still won Super Bowls after the fact.
You're like, no way. But I think the only thing that stopped the Dolphins last year was weather that was cold. If they left the state of Florida, they were cooked. Yeah, like when they had to go to they went to the Chiefs, right? And you're like, no way. Yeah, like Mahomes could do it, Brady could do it.
It was like -3 there that day.
Hill could do it. He scored, but Tua can't.
It was weird. They're not prepared for cold weather for whatever reason. They're just kind of. And that was a little bit of my problem going into the playoffs last year, where I just could not pick them to even cover against the Chiefs there at the end of the season. I was just like, unfortunately, I just think they're too soft of a team. Yeah, they're just a finesse team. They don't have any like hard hitting anybody. Like Javon Holland's a good player. He's a rough and gritty guy. Yeah. Jalen Ramsey get down and dirty, but like there's just very few players that are like that on the team.
Because like when you look at the Chiefs, like Kelsey talent wise, you're kind of like meh. Like he's nothing insane, but like just grit. Like he'll get you through a game or two. Yeah. And they don't have one of those.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the Saints versus Panthers. We don't have to stay on this very long. Saints completely destroyed them.
Obliterated. Just Bryce Young looked so bad.
I mean, pick first play of the game, or first pass play, I should say.
Derek Brown's out for the season.
Yeah, that's a huge blow. He's actually a very good player for them.
He's really solid.
They're already devoid of talent in Carolina, and that's just
their best defensive player since they traded. What was his name?
Brian Burns.
Yeah.
J.C. Horn, decent player. But yeah, he's by far their best.
And their offense is awful. What's his name? Deontay Johnson's good, but Bryce Young cannot get him the ball.
Yeah, Deontay Johnson, he's like one of those guys that like knows how to get open to, and it's just like if he doesn't start getting targets the way he's supposed to, like he's a guy that will probably start speaking up, and then like it's kind of the Malik Neighbors of it all, where like if like things don't start going his direction, a little bit sooner, there's going to be a souring in the locker room, and then you're going to have to make some big time decisions at the end of the season with Bryce Young, and David Tepper's already one of the worst owners in all of football, and he'll probably just double down on a really bad decision, and then you'll just be in the ninth layer of hell again.
Yeah, because right now Panthers, Bryce Young in college was great, but they drafted him before C.J. Stroud, and they look about as dumb as one can look.
And then the trade, in order to do it, they gave Chicago all those picks, which ended up getting Caleb Williams, who didn't look great in week one, but he showed some promise at the very least in the preseason, stuff like that. His nails were painted. It said the Bears.
Yeah.
Which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, we won't stay too long. Saints.
Derek Carr looked solid.
Derek Carr did look as good as he's looked in a few years.
Kamara was decent.
Yeah, he's still pretty good for his. He's getting up there in age, but he's still a good player for sure. I don't know how much stock to put into it, considering it was the Panthers. Panthers in general just bad. Like, they were turning the ball over, so they had a lot more possessions to work with. The Saints did. So I don't know if the Saints offense is going to be this good going forward. I don't think so, but they look good in week one. Yeah, they were able to get the job done. Let's go and move on to the Chargers versus the Raiders. Weird game here. Was kind of close the whole game, more or less. Gardner Minshew did not look great in it. He's probably going to be on a short leash. Aiden O'Connell sitting behind him, and that was already a quarterback kind of controversy going into it, where who was going to get the starting job. So he didn't look good off rip. Obviously, Harbaugh gets his first win coming back into the NFL since moving on to college. And I mean, really, it was the story about the running game for the Chargers, which is the bread and butter of the Harbaugh, Greg Roman type system. They just run the heck out of the football. J.K. Dobbins coming off of 2 really bad injuries, a really bad knee injury, and then a Achilles tear last year in week 1. And he comes up and has a pretty solid day at the office. Got to be excited for him, considering that's just 2 really bad injuries and a guy coming back. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, he had a good day. It was fun to see because obviously he torched Harbaugh at Michigan, at Ohio State.
He did.
So it was fun to see them together. But the Chargers this offseason had a lot of questions because they lost Eckler, they lost Keenan Allen. I don't think they had Mike Williams.
No, Mike Williams is in New York with the Jets.
Yeah, and so everyone was like, huh. So they have Herbert and
some dudes.
Yeah.
Josh Palmer, who's been there the longest now. They drafted Ladd McConkey, who scored in this game. For fantasy purposes, that was cool, but I don't know if anybody started him this week. They may have. But I had him on my bench, so we'll see if he turns into something. Maybe I can swing a little trade with him.
But maybe, Harbaugh's done it before, so he knows what he's doing.
100%. Yeah, at the very least, there's a foundation there now.
100%.
Beforehand, it was just, I feel like it was straight chaos with Brandon Staley at the helm. It was just, there's too much going on. There was not any kind of synchronization between the defense and the offense, and Justin Herbert couldn't get any protection when it came to the O-line. They drafted Joe Alt in the draft.
He looked awesome. He gave Crosby a day.
He did. He was shadowing him like it was his job. Rashawn Slater on the other side is very good as well. And so the O-line seems to be very good. Yeah. The O-line seems to, in the past, be very injury prone. We'll see if they can stay healthy all season, but that's the same for every team going forward. But I did see where the Chargers tweeted something out. It was Control Alt Delete, and I was like, "Damn, dude, that's just such a cool little thing that they can just throw out there for Joe."
I saw a video today about him on Crosby, and I don't think he didn't allow one pressure.
No,
and Crosby's his thing is he's fast, and Joe Alt's 6'8", and he had no problem.
Yeah, he's fast, and he's got that relentless motor. And the fact that Joe Alt was able to just keep with him all day long as a rookie is just incredible. I think going forward, that offensive line is going to be awesome. They were, like I said, able to run the ball pretty well against the Raiders, who do have a good defense. Like I said, they got Christian Wilkins in the offseason. Yeah. He's a player, absolutely. And Max Crosby, obviously, on the edge there.
And lucky for Alt, he doesn't have to go against the Bosa.
Oh, yeah, correct. Yeah, Joey is at least on his team.
Yeah, he gets to avoid one of them.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, Chargers get a big win there. Raiders, man, I don't think they're going to have a great season.
Do they still have Josh Jacobs?
No, he went in free agency to the Packers.
Do they have Devontae Adams?
Yes, they still have Devontae Adams.
Poor Devontae Adams.
Yeah, poor Devontae Adams.
That sucks.
If anybody tuned into the wide receiver, the Netflix series, you felt bad for Devontae Adams last year.
Dude was with Aaron Rodgers his whole career. Life was great, and then just
got traded to the Raiders. Thought it would be a good job to go there with Derek Carr, who he played in college with, and then that lasted one singular year, and they traded to the Saints.
Yeah.
So now he's just kind of at the discretion of whoever they decided the QB is now, and it's just a bunch of ragtag guys. I mean, between last year, Jimmy Garoppolo into Aiden O'Connell into
no one
Gardner Minshew now, and then probably back to Aiden O'Connell eventually whenever Gardner loses a couple of games in a row. It's just going to be, I don't think it's going to go well, unfortunately, for Antonio Pierce, who had a good end of last season. Made a really bad coaching decision in this game in the late in the game, sorry, not third quarter. Fourth quarter with like 4:40 left in the game. They were on, I think, the 43 on the Chargers side of the field, 4th and 1. You're down by a score, and he ends up punting it, and that's just like, you can't be that cowardice in that situation.
No, if you try and you fail, you can at least say you tried.
Exactly. I mean, it's just like, you never know if you're going to be able to get the ball back there. Like the other offense has a chance now to just lead the whole clock. I've never really understood the mindset behind that. It's just too conservative of a play call there. And it bit them in the butt because I think right after that was when J.K. Dobbins ripped off that 30-yard gain and put them in position to go ahead and go down there and score. I think the game winner. I think that was not really the game winner. It was just the game sealer more or less with McConkey. So that was an interesting game for sure. Seahawks versus Broncos. This one was interesting debut of Bo Nix. Very up and down, did not throw the ball very far down the field at all. His ADOT was 4.3 or something like that. It was the shortest in a long time.
His leash was short. They were not really letting him go.
Yeah, I mean, and when he did kind of try to let it go, he was throwing near Seahawks instead of his own players. And it's like, man, I don't know if that's going to work out for them, because in the preseason, he was carving people up. He looked great. Preseason is also very vanilla defenses, and it's just like,
no one's really that
we're going through the motions here. We're trying to get communication stuff figured out.
Exactly.
It's not real football just yet, and then so you get the real bullets flying in week one here, and he did not look great.
Real schemes.
And the Seahawks, secondary has not been, it was not very good last year. Obviously, it's going to be better this year under McDonald because he's just a stud. He knows what he's doing. Came from the Ravens, obviously, this past season. Now the head coach in Seattle, and I think it looked much better on defense. The offense struggled a little bit at the beginning of the game. Geno Smith threw a pick, but then they settled in the game a little bit later, started running the ball with Kenneth Walker, and he started ripping off big gains and essentially kind of sealed the win.
Really good.
Yeah.
But it hurts me to hear that the Seahawks secondary, just defense, isn't great, because when I was growing up, it was the heart of the Legion of Boom.
Yeah, the Legion.
That was awesome. Those guys were so good.
Yeah.
The highlight, Bobby Wagner, Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor, that was so cool.
Yeah, no, they were absolutely studs.
Left over.
Yeah, Pete Carroll, that whole era is gone.
Yeah, Marshawn Lynch. That team had some swagger.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they were scary. And something about those uniforms as well, man.
With the black visors.
Yeah. When Marshawn had that black visor, you're like,
it's Skittles on the sideline, your coach.
Yeah, just didn't care. He's one of those fun players for sure. But yeah, Seahawks get a big win here. Didn't look great at first.
It's week one.
Pulled it out.
Gotta steal it.
Yeah, week one is always chaotic. Just get the win and get out of there.
Ugly.
Yeah, for sure. The debut also of Ryan Grubb, who was the head coach of Washington.
Yeah.
I think no. Sorry, he was the offensive coordinator at Washington. DeBoer was okay. Yeah, he went to Alabama. The OC in Washington moves to be the OC of the Seahawks, and he was known for really letting it slinging the football.
Penix and Adunze got to do it.
Yeah, Adunze, McMillan,
their offense,
Polk. Which all three of those guys got drafted this year, and they were known for just slinging the rock around the field. Yeah. In this game, it looked like I said, they had to start running the ball in order to kind of settle Geno in, and so we'll see how that offense evolves going forward, but hopefully they can kind of get some rhythm going.
Yeah, they have the skills pretty close to Metcalf's pretty good. They have some players that are pretty solid. But
Metcalf's a stud. It's just
the team has to gel.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, Jackson Smith-Njigba should be a good player.
Yeah.
Tyler Lockett had the best day out of all the receivers, and we didn't even know if he was going to play. He was questionable going into it, and then he comes out and has the best game of the three players there that are starting in the wide receiver room. Very interesting for sure. Next game, Buccaneers versus Commanders. I was not as high in the offseason on the Buccaneers that I probably should have been. They
I
brought
was
pretty
not
much
there.
everybody back other than Dave Canales, who went to be the head coach in Carolina. And I was a little bit worried about that because he's kind of become like the not so talked about, but like QB whisperer a little bit. Because he had Geno Smith playing good when he was there, and then obviously he kind of got Baker back on track last season. And I was just thinking, what if like it was his system that was the thing there? But it turns out more than anything, I believe it was just Baker's confidence level. I think he is now confident that this is his team going forward. And I think there was a quote out there, I think it was from Mike Evans, that was essentially like he came to Baker and was like, dude, look, you have security here. You've been paid. Like, we're not trading you. You're not getting benched. Let it rip. If you throw an interception, I'll support you. I don't care. Just like throw the throws that you want to
like you know how to play.
100%. Just sling it out there. Just don't care about just you have security. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, because it's got to be hard as like a bounce around almost starting QB because you're essentially scared to like mess up
100%.
Because then like a few bad games you're gone, and then like if you're like the amount of dumb stuff Mahomes and Allen do, they don't care. Like, they're not going anywhere, so they're gonna try it. Like behind the back passes, no looks. Like they're just gonna let it rip.
Exactly. Josh Allen's been responsible for some of the most ridiculous picks thrown and fumble. The amount of fumbles he's had, like I think leads the league since he's been in the league. But when he does some of the stuff he's able to do, like you just look a little bit past it, and so.
He trusts his ability. He knows, like, I will make a play and it'll be horrible, and then I'll make one and people will be like, oh my god.
I can throw a game winner and also throw a game ender. But, like, you just got to take the good with the bad with the great players.
But the players that play scared, you can't. As a quarterback, you can't be scared to throw the ball.
No, you can't. In this game, obviously, Baker threw for 4 touchdowns, looked incredible in it. Mike Evans turning back the clock once again. He's like, what is he, 33 now, and still
1,000-yard season.
Oh my god, I think he's going to do it again.
Yeah, probably,
dude. He's going to have a case for. I mean, I think he's going to be a Hall of Famer no matter what.
Probably,
but
he's got Super Bowl too.
Yeah, we're working on first ballot at this point. Like, it's going to be a debate at the very least.
Yeah, just the consistency that he brings in. You're like, ridiculous. Wow.
Yeah,
like this guy just year in and year out. There's
bad QB play. Good QB play.
He still gets his.
Yeah, for sure. Chris Godwin looked much better. Looks way more healthy than he did the last couple seasons as well. Jalen McMillan, drafted like I was talking about earlier from Washington, looked good in this game. Had a touchdown. Rachaad White still looks like Rachaad White cannot run the ball between the tackles, but catches the ball out of the backfield well. And then Bucky Irving, they drafted this year as well, and he actually looked good between the tackles, but I don't know how much of that was considering they were kind of blowing out the Commanders, and he was getting a lot of run at the end of the game there. We'll see going forward if he has any real like fantasy value. Because, I mean, obviously if Rachaad White were to get injured, then you got Bucky Irving, Sean Tucker's behind him. I don't know if I'd pick him up just yet in fantasy, but if you're really hurting for running back play in fantasy, maybe you give a stab. I'm really hurting in one of my leagues because it was an auction draft and I went really crazy with wide receivers. So I might consider it just to see if a Rachaad White injury happens. I don't wish injury on anybody, but sometimes you just got to be prepared for stuff like that in fantasy.
Fantasy, if there's a quarterback, it's Jaden Daniels. Like there might be some promise.
Dude was fast, ran a lot.
Just maybe.
I mean, I think he had 88 yards on the day rushing, had a rushing touchdown. Threw the ball okay, wasn't great, but he doesn't have any weapons. They have Terry McLaurin, and he barely threw the ball to him. He was keeping a lot of stuff in the middle of the field, it looked like, so he was throwing the ball to his tight ends a little bit. He threw the ball to Eckler a few times. Brian Robinson's still running the ball a little bit, but their O-line is pretty shoddy, so you're going to see a lot of Jaden Daniels running the football again this season. We'll see if that's sustainable considering how tiny he is. And there was a couple times where his helmet got knocked off in this game. I think he needs to tighten his chin strap a little bit there. But yeah, just get down on the ground. And he looked like he didn't know how to slide. He was just falling forward when he wanted to slide, so that was a little weird. But yeah, for fantasy purposes, perfectly cromulent quarterback to have as your starting QB there. So that was interesting at the very least. So obviously Buccaneers get the job done there. They kind of smote the Commanders. Commanders are going to be they'll be another one of those teams that's kind of a pain in the rear, but their defense is bad.
Yeah, their defense is terrible. But Jaden Daniels is one where you're like, oh my god, can this guy stop making Heisman plays?
Exactly.
Over and over.
He's going to be annoying because it's going to be one of those things where it's like, we can, like, if our defense gets a stop here on this Commanders team, we can put the game away. We'll salt the game away or whatever. But then he's the type of quarterback that's going to be like, it's going to be like 3rd and 8. And you're like, okay, let's just get this stop. And then he just runs for 28 yards. And you're like, geez, dude, can we just not? Like, they're like cockroaches. Like, they just will not die.
It'll be one of those like plays where the secondary does a fantastic job. The QB spy misses and
that's it. Off. Yeah, he just takes off. Yeah, for sure. Let's go to the next game. Cowboys versus Browns. This one was an absolute disaster for the Browns.
Yeah, the Deshaun Watson should have just quit football after college. He peaked. he peaked at Clemson.
I mean, he was good for the first few years there in Houston.
Yeah.
But, dude, as soon as those allegations started coming out and the weird story came out and another story has dropped again, I don't know if the Browns leaked it because of how bad he looked in week 1.
You don't want to deal with that as an organization.
No, you do not. Man, that's got to be up there with one of the worst contracts ever given out.
Absolutely.
$230 million fully guaranteed.
It's up there with Kirk Cousins.
But Kirk Cousins is like,
you're kind of like,
he steals money for sure, but at least he's like competent.
He also has been like actually pretty solid.
Yes, absolutely. He might have stolen all this money from the Falcons, this contract instead of the Achilles.
At like 9.
Yeah, but before that, at least he was competent. He was a top half type of quarterback. But Watson looks basically unplayable.
Yeah,
I don't understand what the Browns are going to end up doing here because they have decent weapons around him. Amari Cooper could not get the ball in his hands. No. Jerry Jeudy scored a touchdown in this game, which, I mean, was good, but then he ended up leaving the game hurt.
Yeah. Browns' defense is also really, like, Myles Garrett's an absolute animal.
He's incredible. Their defense is good.
Yeah.
But they can't just keep up with a team if you can't, you can't move the ball at all on offense. No. I mean, so it's going to be a long year.
Tired.
Yeah, it's going to be a long year for the Browns' defense if it continues this way on offense for the team. I think you got to give Jameis Winston a shot.
100%.
And as early as possible.
Especially, like, if the on-field stuff's its own thing with Watson. You're like, oh, he's not playing with the off-field stuff. You're like, that's got to cause some turmoil in the locker room.
Yeah, when it's double bad, like...
Yeah, it's
remove yourself from the situation.
It's a double negative that does not make a positive in this situation.
It does not. It never has. No. So... yeah, I think we need to see Winston. Honestly, for personal reasons, the Eagles play the Browns this year. So if you want to keep Watson in there until the Eagles play them, I'm good with that decision. But for the sake of my fantasy team and Amari Cooper, I want Jameis Winston in there because at least I know he's going to sling the rock. He might throw a ton of interceptions.
Absolutely.
But that could be that's essentially what Joe Flacco did at the end of last season. Yeah. He either threw a touchdown or a pick.
Rip.
Yeah, he was just letting it rip out there, which is exactly what Jameis does. So, honestly, I would give him a shot if I'm a Browns fan.
And the Cowboys now have something to prove because they were decent last year, and then they got embarrassed by Jordan Love.
Multiple, 12-5 seasons in a row. I think 3 in a row now. Yeah. And then, obviously, they choke in the playoffs.
Yeah, always.
Just get absolutely mollywopped by the Packers and Jordan Love.
Bad.
That was...
like they made Micah Parsons and company look like just a bunch of middle schoolers.
Yeah, they had people running up and down the field as wide open as I've ever seen anybody on a football field.
Yeah, Jaden Reed looked like Megatron.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh.
Like Luke Musgrave was running up the sideline with nobody within the screen.
Yeah.
It was wild stuff.
Yeah. It made you question if they had 11 guys on the field.
100%.
Like, 7 of them, like, what are they doing?
Yeah, it was wild to watch that. I've told people over this all season, like, as an Eagles fan, obviously the back half of the Eagles season last year was just depressing to watch in itself. But that was probably the most fun I've ever had watching football.
Was awesome.
Watching Jordan Love and the Packers dismantle the Cowboys. That was just one of the premier hate watches I've ever had in my life. But this season they start off hot again. And
the talent's there.
It always is.
Micah Parsons is probably the best defensive player in the league.
I would agree.
One of them. Dak Prescott's pretty good. CeeDee Lamb just got paid.
Just got super paid.
So he's going to start.
And
playing.
so did Dak before the game started. So he got super paid, $60 million a year.
Contracts in.
Correct. My problem going forward, obviously, we know that they're going to kill in the regular season, probably. Unless they are thin, so if injuries start happening, it could go very badly for them. But like, obviously, we know the thing in the back of everybody's head is, like, they're going to play well in the regular season. Are they going to be able to compete in the playoffs?
Yeah.
But, like, also coming down the pipeline, something to think about for them is you're going to be in this exact same situation you were this season with CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott next season with Micah Parsons.
Yeah.
So then you're going to be allocating, like, over 50% of your salary cap in 3 players.
Yeah.
And at that point, if you haven't been able to make it through the playoffs,
Absolutely.
when you weren't paying all these guys top dollar, I don't know how you're going to field a team that's going to be competitive enough to do it after the fact. So that's just a little bit concerning for them.
Yeah, because you get to a point where it's like those 3 are awesome, but like the Mahomes, Kelsey, you're like, well, they win Super Bowls.
Yeah,
so, like they deserve, and like Chris Jones, like they win Super Bowls, so they deserve to be paid.
Exactly.
Like no one's gonna be like, oh, that's awesome. You get to the wild card and get smacked.
Yeah,
like that's not something.
Yeah, people are going to lose their jobs if that happens again.
Yeah,
and it's going to be Mike McCarthy because they just paid all the other guys. But obviously, before this contract came down, right before the season started, there was the inklings about Dak Prescott being able to be like the first like real big time free agent to hit the market. Obviously, that's not going to be the case anymore. But like that was on the table, and so they've kind of steadied the ship enough this like right before the season started, for there not to be so much turmoil around the team.
They have,
but you still have Mike McCarthy not extended, and he's essentially coaching for his job. So that comes with a lot of pressure, obviously. And now he knows he's the lone wolf going through the season. Like, if I don't come through, I'm gone. And so, like, I don't know if that's going to manifest itself in a good way or a bad way for him as a coach.
Yeah, that's never ideal to be where it is a coach. But two, with Parsons, like he's gonna like revamp the defensive like payment of because he's going to get so much money.
Oh yeah, just a ridiculous amount.
And so then, like you said, with the contract and like he's a game changer, but he's a little bit almost kind of soft. Like when he gets doubled and triple teamed,
like he started to give up a little bit. Yeah,
and like Aaron Donald, it was still getting sacks, and you're like, oh my god.
Yeah, he had that elite motor. Micah's obviously a great player.
He's one heck of an athlete.
But there is times where on the field you kind of see where like the frustration comes in, and he's like, "What else do y'all want me to do?" kind of thing, and then he gets like to where he like stops playing a little bit.
When there's 6 hands on him, you can tell he's kind of
he's just like I'm over this. But at that point, like if there's that many hands on him, somebody else has got to win the 1-on-1, and so that's where like some of the draft picks are going to have to come in for the Cowboys this year.
Absolutely.
DeMarcus Lawrence is still there, so he's got to win his 1-on-1s. But they got the job done against the Browns. They completely mollywopped them. They could not do a single thing on offense. I don't know if that was more Cowboys defense really putting the pressure on them,
both,
or if it was just Watson is unplayable, like I was saying earlier. But either way, we'll see kind of what kind of shakes out between the two of those going forward throughout the season. Next game was the Sunday Night Football game, Lions versus Rams. This was a rematch of the divisional matchup between the two teams. Once again, also in Ford Field, just a ruckus environment there. That was really fun to watch once again.
Prayers up to Puka Nacua.
Oh, dude, that's the worst.
I hate that for him.
He's on IR, so hopefully it's just 4 games and he'll be back. But we'll see going forward.
Cooper Kupp had a day.
Cooper Kupp was
great. He looked like he did 2 years ago when
he had the Triple Crown.
Unstoppable,
yeah. He looked like he was back. Obviously, he had 21 targets, which is just ridiculous.
Yeah, wow. Well, he had to be. Last year, not that he was resting, but like he had help. Before that, it was his.
Yeah, at least Puka was there, and now you kind of have just Cooper Kupp. You have DeMarcus Robinson. I guess Tutu Atwell still on the team, but he didn't get a whole lot of run, it looked like. Tyler Johnson made a play in this game. That was a huge one. He ran for it felt like 50 yards on one play. But yeah, at the end of the day, for me, I don't know what was going on with the game plan for the Detroit Lions early on in the game.
Yeah.
They seem to almost want to justify the Jared Goff contract. They're like, we just gave you a ton of money. We're going to let you go out here and sling it around and beat your former team that you hate. That's not the way they need to run.
It's to give it to Gibbs and Montgomery and let them, and then 100%. When they bring the defense in, then you let them go.
100%, yeah. So it was a little bit of a convoluted game plan, I thought, at the beginning of the game, and they were able to still kind of be competitive throughout it. Then they let the Rams get back in the game, even though they were dealing with a ridiculous amount of injuries. Obviously, Puka goes out. Then they were already on their backup left tackle. Then their backup left tackle leaves in the game, so they're on their third left tackle. I think Rob Havenstein, their right tackle, was out as well to start the game. Then they got some injuries mid-game. I think Steve Avila left the game at left guard.
It was not ideal.
It was bad. They were dealing with a ton of injuries, and they were still very competitive because Matthew Stafford balled out.
Yeah,
he had an incredible game.
Stafford's he's a player. Like he'll make it a game always. But I think the whole NFL has to give their credit to Dan Campbell.
Oh,
he took over a Lions team that there was no dynasty. There was no the Lions, and they were so bad his first year. And then they were not good, but they were close enough to where you're well.
No, they got a chance.
And then they turned, and when they drafted Gibbs and Laporta, you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
They just won the draft.
For sure. Yeah, it was some controversial picks at the time for the draft,
Absolutely.
but when all of them hit, the controversy leaves the table completely.
Absolutely.
And so, like you said, Dan Campbell just completely put the Lions back
Totally
on the map.
turned it around.
Yeah.
Now, with Hutchinson and all them, their defense is good.
Oh,
and
for sure.
They basically run the offense Michigan ran last year. It's we're going to run it down your throat, and then when we try and stop that, we'll start passing.
Exactly, yeah. And that's what I think happened in the back end of that game was they finally said, all right, we're not going to mess around anymore. We're going to start running the ball with David Montgomery and get the ball in the hands of Jahmyr Gibbs on little swing passes and stuff like that. And then, obviously in overtime, marched right down the field.
Yeah, they
down their throat and just scored and won
We're
the
going
game.
to run it, and you're not going to do anything about it.
Yeah, so the Lions, obviously still a very good team. A little concerned about their secondary still. I thought they were going to clean that up with the drafting of Terrion Arnold and then the trade for Carlton Davis. Still didn't look great there, so maybe it just gets better over time. And as the season goes on, I think that'll probably improve there. But that was their one weakness last year. They just didn't have the players. Right. They got the players this year. We'll see if they're good enough to make it happen.
The players got to gel, and their O-line deserves credit because they kind of got crap a few years ago for drafting Penei Sewell.
Yeah,
and he's turned out to be really good.
Incredible.
And now with that line, with you got Montgomery who's just going to put his head down and run, and Gibbs who's a lot shiftier. Together, they're good.
Yeah, that absolute thunder and lightning thing is just perfect for them. All right, let's move on to Monday Night Football, 49ers versus the Jets. This one kind of hurts my heart a little bit. I don't like saying it. I'm a big Aaron Rodgers guy, but there is a chance. I'm gonna leave the door open a little bit here, but there's a chance it might be over.
Yeah, you can just tell. He's always looked a little older, but
this year it's a little bit different. He looked even more skittish in the pocket than he ever has, and he started looking a little skittish that last year in Green Bay. Yeah. And obviously last year he didn't play at all.
Yeah.
And he was just hopping around. Obviously he's got the Achilles too, so I was kind of monitoring that after the news of Kirk Cousins, and I was trying to look to see if he was favoring his one leg as well, and it was just I don't know if it may get better over the course of the season. And I think he's obviously going to have to just continue to gel with his new, receiving core. I mean, new to him at the very least. Garrett Wilson's incredible. He's going to be great this season, I believe.
Well, the Jets have the talent. Breece Hall's really good. Their defense is also pretty solid.
I think it was better last year. They still had a few players that they're missing this season. That was big time depth on that D line. That D line just came into it in waves. Bryce Huff obviously comes over to the Eagles. We got him in free agency. They trade for Hassan Reddick from the Eagles, and he's refusing to come into the team at all. He wants a new contract. They're just not giving it to him. So he's just sitting out, just losing millions of dollars per week because of the missed games and stuff like that. So that's kind of a disaster situation for them. Not a great locker room vibe probably for them for that reason. But man,
I do think people kind of forget, they just played the 49ers. They didn't have McCaffrey, sure, but, you saw it, put the backup behind that O-line. That guy's fine. They still have their offensive lines really good. They had the weapons, and their defense has always been great with the other Bosa brother. Yeah. They're a good team, and while it sucks that they lost and the Jets didn't look great, you're you kind
of expect it, I was really hoping. I mean, I'm a bit of a 49ers hater because I'm an Eagles fan, and I wasn't one before because I really like Kyle Shanahan as a play caller. I think he's a genius. I think he's the best play caller in all of football and best offensive mind in general in all of football. But it was just like in that NFC Championship game where they were complaining a lot about the Eagles when the Brock Purdy elbow situation happened. I just didn't like how they handled that after the fact, and so now I've kind of become a little bit of a 49ers hater. So I kind of like root for the downfall a little bit. Yeah. I'm not going to say that too loud, but at the very least, like, they're the 49ers. They're going to be good. Kyle Shanahan is the man. He knows what he's doing. He's going to always have a competent offense at the very least, and then the defense has just absolute players there. I mean, Bosa, like you said, you have Fred Warner, who's an absolute just monster. Dude just plays with his hair on fire, just runs the ball quickly as everything. But they're just a good all-around team that they didn't drop off a whole lot. Obviously, it's hard to get back to the Super Bowl after losing one. There's a precedent out there where it just never happens. Where you might make the playoffs, but you don't go very far in them after the fact. It's just one of those things where it's just so demoralizing to have to try to climb that mountain back up again. We saw with the Eagles last year; they completely collapsed because the stories came out about the Eagles essentially whenever they were 10-1. There was the stories about how everybody was walking around like their dog died because they were just all so miserable at the fact that they let that opportunity slip through their hands. And so it was very unfortunate that's the way that happened. But maybe the 49ers can be the exception to the rule where they can kind of work through it. But we'll just have to see. But
they're blessed with the X factor of McCaffrey.
100%.
He was hurt, or however hurt he was, but he's a game changer. And so they got the players. They got the solo star talent to make it happen. It's just if they'll all come together.
Yeah, they got the Jimmys and the Joes for sure, as well as the X's and the O's, and that's just a great combo. Obviously, you need both to be a very competitive, to be a Super Bowl contender once again. And the 49ers are probably going to be a contender once again. They'll probably win the NFC West, especially the way they looked in Week 1 there, and the way everybody else looked in Week 1. I just don't think anybody else can compete right now. Obviously the Cardinals defense isn't good.
No.
I don't think Geno's consistent enough to really compete with them in the NFC West. And then you have the Rams, who are already super banged up there with weapons and the O-line, and the defense I don't think can compete either. So probably going to be a cakewalk, unfortunately, for the 49ers all the way to the division title.
It normally is.
Yeah.
But it was a good first week of football.
It was. Yep. Let's get into, I'm gonna go straight into what I was alluding to earlier about just Joe Schoen.
Yeah.
I don't know if you watched, but I tuned into every single episode of the HBO series of Hard Knocks, the off season with the New York Giants there, where we got to see all the ins and outs of the Saquon situation. That was an interesting situation at the very least. Obviously, you had the owner coming into the office of Joe Schoen, the general manager there in New York, and saying essentially I'm going to have nightmares if Saquon, or I'm not going to be able to sleep if Saquon goes to Philly. And that's exactly what happened after the fact. But I'm saying all this to essentially say that in the off season, there was a lot of what people the headlines saying anonymous blank 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 said this about this player.
Yeah.
And two things came out in the off season that just didn't sit right with me. One was an anonymous executive said that the vibe in the New York Jets locker room is horrendous because Aaron Rodgers is a bad team player, blah blah blah. He's not for the team. He's just doing his own thing. He wants to just be whatever. And then there was another one also that was anonymous defensive coordinator says that Jalen Hurts, we know his weakness. If you blitz him, he's going to panic, blah, 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 blah. And I just it's just funny to me that you have these anonymous defensive coordinator, anonymous GM, anonymous executive, anonymous whoever that comes out and says these grandiose statements about players or coaches or whatever it is. And then I get to watch on Hard Knocks the offseason Joe Schoen and that whole operation there in New York. And I sit back and I just go, who are they to like insult our intelligence? Because like I've had more nuanced conversations about NFL football than I watched on that Hard Knocks thing with the New York Giants, and it's like, how do I know that not 50% or more of front offices talk and sound like what the Giants sound like?
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you're just like, who are you to say that this person is going to panic if like the blitz comes out? Like they don't really seem to know what they're talking about a lot of times, and they're just like spewing things just to see what happens. And like, I'm not saying I know more than like an NFL football coach at certain things, but like, I just don't like the idea that like they look like just regular dudes like trying to run an NFL organization.
Oh, totally.
And
they're trying to act so smart.
Yeah, they're like, we're high and mighty. Like, we know better than everybody else. Like, this guy stinks. This guy has to be a sour apple in the locker room or whatever. Like, I just don't like those grandiose statements from anonymous people. Like, say it with your chest.
Yeah.
Come out and just say it.
Yeah.
Bengals defensive coordinator says Jalen Hurts stinks. Yeah. Say that, and then I'll respect you. But if you're throwing some anonymous BS out there for a reporter to give him, a little soundbite or whatever, I just think that's cowardice. I think that's whack. And like, I don't trust it because like, I've watched what the Giants are doing in their like boardroom when it comes to draft and free agency, and you just let Saquon walk, you re-sign Daniel Jones. So like, how do I trust any organization that isn't one of the top tier ones like the Chiefs, the Eagles, the organizations that run things the right way? Yeah. I just like, if it's not one of those teams, I don't want to hear it. Like, I really don't.
Yeah, I think like, this goes beyond the NFL, but just like the experts of sports.
Yeah.
Like last year, I looked at Andy Katz's March Madness bracket. Horrible.
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, oh, this guy knows bad. And then I saw Desmond Howard's prediction for the who's going to make the college football playoff, and 4 of his teams already lost.
Yeah.
And you're like, these guys have no idea what
no clue. Yeah. Like, so like, don't act so high and mighty.
Yeah, like you're better than everyone.
Like, we're essentially doing the same thing you're doing, just like throwing crap at a wall and seeing what sticks. So like, at the end of the day, just be entertaining. Like, try to get it right, but like, don't act like you're better than even somebody as low on the totem pole as us when it comes to analyzing things.
And like, I think that's where Romo gets a lot of respect in broadcasting, is like, he can call a play because like he's seen it, but he'll explain why he sees it, and he won't just be like, "Oh, you're gonna blitz." I told you. You're like, all right. Like,
He's just trying to be entertaining.
Yeah, like he's explaining what he's seeing and why he thinks he's seeing it.
Yeah. That pretty much wraps that up. I have a few fantasy like tidbits that I want to go over before we're done here.
No Panthers.
Yeah, do not. that is like, my advice after week 1 is it's week 1 in fantasy chaos, and week 1 in the NFL in general. Do not hit the panic button unless you have a certain few players. And those few players I'm going to say are Deontay Johnson, Chuba Hubbard, basically any Panther ever. Like, I would hit the panic button because Bryce Young looked that bad and the offense looked that dysfunctional. Mark Andrews, panic a little bit there because Isaiah Likely looked better than him.
And Henry, he's gonna take a lot of goal line.
100%. So you're gonna get vultured quite a bit this season if you're a Mark Andrews manager that did not draft Isaiah Likely, because there's a chance you're not gonna get him on the waiver wires this
especially after last week.
Yeah, 100%. So and then also Amari Cooper's on that list because Deshaun Watson and
Browns got to figure out a quarterback.
It's bad on that side. We've kind of already discussed that at length there, but I mean, other than Njoku, who also got hurt in this game, like, there's not really that many weapons on the Browns offense that I would have him on my fantasy team anyways. Like, I'm not putting Jerry Jeudy on my roster. I'm not putting Elijah Moore on my roster. Kadarius Toney actually just signed with the Browns, which, like, that's another thing they need for sure, is just another weapon when Deshaun Watson stinks.
True.
It's a weird signing, but whatever. But yeah, just week 1 fantasy, do not panic just yet. Just see what happens in week 2, and then obviously try to hit the waivers and get some good players there.
So I got a question for you.
Yeah.
So it's a 2-flex league, and I have Deontay Johnson, but on my bench is Keon Coleman, who put up like numbers where I was like,
he got intriguing enough numbers,
6 or 7 targets for and he caught like 4 passes for maybe 50 yards.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like, how much of that offense he'll be a part of.
I don't know if like you ride with Deontay one more week,
Yeah,
and then if it goes bad again,
I think I'll give.
Did you go 1-0 this week or no?
Yeah, my core.
That's right.
I had the
Jake Moody.
Yeah, I was down 25. So yes,
that's so crazy.
Yeah, that was one of the wildest things ever.
Yeah.
But so yes, I'm 1-0 in fantasy. It's not that much.
Okay. No big deal.
Yeah.
1-0.
Can't win them all if you don't win the first, but that's not important.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think in that situation I would stick with Deontay one more week just to see what would happen. And then if he
Panthers almost not even figured out, but just get better.
Yeah, just slightly improve per week. It may work out for you. So I definitely wouldn't drop him by any stretch.
Because also the Panthers have such few weapons.
Correct.
If they
somebody's gonna pop.
Yeah, if they throw it, that's where the ball is going.
100%. Yeah. So and then if he poops the bed kind of in week 2,
then I'll give Coleman a run because I know Allen ain't going anywhere.
Yeah, he's spreading the ball around right now.
Rock go.
Correct.
Yeah, might as well.
All right. Well, I feel like that just wraps it up for the first episode of Coordinated Chaos in the 2024-2025 season.
Should be a good one.
Yeah. Hopefully everybody enjoys this. Appreciate you coming on once again.
Glad we could get the mics working and figure it all out.
The technical difficulties at the beginning were not great, but we worked through it. I appreciate everybody listening, and please follow on my Twitter, on TikTok, on YouTube. Follow on all that stuff, and we will talk to you later.
Peace.